Hello and welcome to the show. A couple of weeks ago now we did some van racing, which was really rather good fun. We had an awful lot of close racing. These vans were upgraded to D class, so you know they have a little bit more speed and a little bit more handling. One thing I did notice though was they had a tendency to roll over, even on some fairly sensible tracks, which got me thinking. Could we do some more extreme van racing on some perhaps more dangerous race circuits? So we start at the Camino Viejo short track. This is one of the nastiest first corners of any race circuit I can think of, really. Notorious for rolling vehicles and causing incidences. So what could go wrong with throwing 16 vans at it? Well, aside from a kerfuffle on the outside of the corner that had nothing to do with the horrible curbs, everybody got around it pretty safely, which is a surprise. And then everybody proceeded to go too wide through the next corner, which was also a surprise how well that ended, because this is another curb that is very, very easy to roll vans on. A few people would run a little bit wide, but on the opening lap, everybody survived. There is a grey Vandura somewhere going quite sideways in the background. Much like the first time we did this, the van racing was proving to be pretty exciting on the opening lap. There was the odd little bit of bumping here and there, but on the most part that didn't really matter too much because you know, we're kind of racing vans. It did only take to the second lap before we had a minor problem. Husky was running in third, got a little bit brave on the curbs, and while he didn't roll, his van going on two wheels was enough to cause him to spin and bounce off a wall and cause a problem at the opening couple of corners. The curbs there, with the way that the track is kind of banked, sort of hilly as well, very easy for a van to end up on two wheels. Husky got a little bit unlucky on that particular one, as he wasn't particularly out of shape there, and ended up spinning in front of a pack of cars, which is never good. The racing was still being eventful into the next few laps, with plenty of overtaking on a track that really isn't built for overtaking. This is a very tough place to ever get past people, because there's never a particularly big braking. There just really isn't a braking zone, but people were finding areas to overtake in. As in the background there was the yellow Transit past someone. Yeah, I was surprised how much overtaking there was going on. Husky's day was about to get a lot worse with a slow speed roll on another nasty curb. You do not have to be going very fast to hit that curb. Husky's van was pretty damaged from the first crash, and it tried to recover to the pits, just wasn't thinking particularly about the curb, and he found himself on his side. Eventually Husky would back out of the race as his van would get stuck in a really rather awkward place, and nobody could really rescue it from there. Again, more close racing going on over third place, as a GMC Vandura was doing his best to try and hold off a couple of Transits as they run out of the second corner. The Vandura has lost one position. There really wasn't too much of a difference between the vans. The balance of this racing that I was a bit worried about when I first set it up, it really wasn't a problem. Everything was very, very close. The Vandura had just a little bit more straight line speed in general. The Transits were a little bit better through the corners. As you can see here, the red Transit's on the inside. It got a better run out of that corner. However, the Vandura's just got a tiny bit more speed and can beat him to the final corner. Outbrakes himself a little bit though and has to run wide. It's not too much of a problem though if you're on the outside of that final corner, because you'll be on the inside for the first corner, and the first corner here is very fast and you're very unlikely to go around the outside. You're also unlikely to go around the outside of the second corner. It doesn't stop the Transit from trying though. It does have to take to the grass a little bit. Two vans don't really fit on that piece of racetrack, but still the Transit was determined to go around the outside. And as they're alongside for this next corner, the Transit is where you really want to be. It lifts up onto two wheels though. Amazingly, the Transit can hold it around the outside as well. That's that's half a lap those two sped side by side, which was pretty damn impressive. An overtake of the evening does go to the Transit for finding his way around the outside eventually. Things were about to go bad for me as well, as I too just brushed the curb a little bit too much. Don't have a spectacular roll as Husky did, but I had to go and clatter into a wall a little bit to save that one. Got away with it though. Much better to do that than to have the van roll. And also we're racing a big strong van. You know, if you bump a wall, you'll probably get away without too much damage. There was plenty of racing going on further back as well, as a Transit squeezes its way past a Vandura, promptly gives the curb a little bit too wide a berth through here, ends up out sideways across the sort of slidey stuff. Don't really want to be ending up out there, and then promptly loses the place again. However, it's much better to do that than to sort of take a too shallow a line and clip that inside curb. You'll lose a bit of time if you run wide. You'll lose an awful lot more time if you do this sort of thing. Yeah, that's not the line you want to take through that corner. As another Transit finds itself on its side and now quite a bit broken. Amazingly, up until this point, only 2 vans had rolled from the curb. I was expecting to see an awful lot more have problems on a track like this. This is a really nasty track for curbs. At the front and things were somewhat close between us. I was on maximum attack mode, and I think everybody around me was as well, as we had pretty much forget the dangerous curves and just try your best to overtake the vehicles in front. We only had a couple of laps to go, and the laps around here were about 53 seconds. So yeah, we were throwing caution to the wind, trying to find a way past the vehicle in front or to defend from the vehicle behind, as the blue Vandura just ran a little bit wide. That was all the space I needed to get my van up the inside. The Transit behind was trying to follow as well. The Vanduras, though, just had that little bit of speed. As we come into the final corner, though, the Vanduras may have tangled a little bit. I got my vehicle up the inside at one point. It looked like we were going to go 3 wide into the first corner, which is definitely not a good idea. In the end, the blue Vandura backs out of trying to go for the lead, but does manage to hold on to second place, while the Transit gets quite a lot on 2 wheels, but manages to save it. All the meantime, while we were squabbling over the lead, the Transit in 4th was catching up to us. And as we come on to the final lap, I got a little bit of leeway to the vans behind, the 2 Transits that were squabbling over second place. And I was feeling fairly confident. Unfortunately, I'd forgotten to switch off maximum attack mode and promptly rolled my vehicle in spectacular fashion on the first corner. Second and third crashed into it, and then 4th suddenly ran out of road and smacked into the side of the red Transit. I was the first vehicle to have a monumental accident on that first corner. And I was expecting, to be honest, more vehicles to roll like that. The red Transit then was to have another incident rolling on the curb further around the track. Again, another vehicle with quite a lot of damage, not going particularly fast, managing to roll. If you hit that curb just right or just wrong, depending on your perspective, very easy to have a roll. And it's also a terrible place to roll, in that your vehicle will gradually slide onto the track because of the way the area is banked. So the vehicle that had been circulating in 5th and been circulating in a fairly lonely 5th suddenly found himself in the lead, with the top 4 all crashing into each other on the final lap. A GMC Vandura was finally going to take its first win over all the van races, and the Transit that had been circulating in 6th was to get second place. A rather eventful final lap, but the rest of the race had been remarkably good. We move on to our second race at Maple Valley, another track. I like Maple Valley, I enjoy driving around here. Tend not to use it very much in sort of versus community events, etc., because it is unbelievably dangerous. There are a number of curbs on this track that cause normal race cars, normal cars to have problems. So yeah, racing vans around here is rather scary. I had a problem on the opening lap. It wasn't the most spectacular of 2-wheeled moments, but it was enough to put me off the track. I then completely didn't realise there was a Transit on the inside of me, so I apologise for that little bump. Apart from that though, we had all round the first few corners safely, which was remarkable. Husky had made up a huge number of places on this opening lap as he has a look at trying to get into second place. The Transit though can keep the position around the outside, gets caught out by a slightly slow Vandura, gives him a little bit of a bump as we run down towards the hairpin for the first time. Again, further back, everything was all fairly clean. It was all fairly close racing at this point. As we come up towards The next fairly scary section running up the hill, they're trying to go through. 3 wide doesn't work up there. You really don't want to be going 3 wide. Husky almost finds himself in the lead. The Transit somehow, I'm not entirely sure how the Transit got away with that. Suddenly found a burst of speed. It's then sort of in pairs as we round the top of the hill. This is a corner very easy to get carried away, try to take too much speed into that corner and end up out on the sand. However, I got it right this time, managed to sweep around the outside of a Vandura, make my way up into third, and then the Vandura has a tumble, gets away with it somehow. That was certainly luckiest save of the evening. Once your van's scraping along on its door mirror, there is very little that you can do about it. The Vandura, though, was slow off the corner, which allows a Transit pass before they reach the next. Vandura's on 2 wheels again. Not what you want to be doing on that final corner, as the red Transit then pulls alongside and can get the position into the first corner. You will notice I have suddenly ended up back in this battle as the blue Vandura gets a really big slide into the first corner. Also not sure how I got past the pair of them. That red Transit as well. But anyway, yes, I too had a scary moment on this final corner. Big 2-wheel moment and a bump into the wall. Again, got away with only minor damage. I lost quite a lot of time in sort of recovering. I lost 3 places, which I then regained 2 almost instantly. But yeah, saving the vehicle was much more important than worrying about that small bit of aero damage that I took. Further back, there was to be less spectacular saving and more spectacular crashing, as a bright green Transit goes for a tumble at the top of the hill. There was also a yellow Transit on 2 wheels through the chicane. It was all going on. There was a slightly less green Transit on the final corner that would also have a big flip, a big laggy flip as well, for that matter. So within 3 corners, I think we had 3 vans actually roll, and there were a few near misses in there as well. The first lap was certainly more eventful roll-wise here than it had been at Camino. As we moved on through the race, things were still pretty close. Again, much like the first session, the first few races on sensible tracks, even these slightly more silly, slightly more dangerous tracks were producing some very good racing. Again, Maple Valley is not a particularly easy place to overtake, and the red Transit was very determined to get past there going on 2 wheels. I wouldn't want to be going too wide and have my car on the curb through there. That's a tough place to overtake, and very, very easy to roll. But yeah, this place is not easy to overtake on, and still vans were finding way past. At the front, and Husky was trying his best to chase down a Transit. The Transit had just pulled a little bit of a gap on this lap, which would all come to nothing after a big roll into the final corner and squashing his fellow Transit. Not a good place to end up on your side, as people have a habit of running wide through this final corner, which is not good when there is an upside down and stranded Transit. Yeah, unsurprisingly, that was only ever going to end one way. You don't want to be running wide through that final corner. Not a good place to end up out wide. With all of the shenanigans going on, I had found myself into 2nd place. It was still fairly close though around here. From sort of 2nd back to sort of 5th or 6th, I think. We were all in a rather long line. I got things very wrong at this corner. Ended up kind of out of position trying to defend from the red Transit, which was not a clever idea, as I clattered the curb a little bit too much. The Transit behind me clatters the curb a bit too much, and yeah, I end up on my roof, and the other Transit gets away with it. Recovers. I don't know how he stayed on 2 wheels for so long on that one. Yeah, don't want to be out of position on that corner, and I may have broken it a tiny bit, and maybe a little bit stuck. These two had a good old battle for quite a lot of the race. The red Transit, I don't know where he quite got overtaken, but was again being brave. I think every single time I watched him through that corner, he was on 2 wheels. Not what you want to be doing, particularly. But still, he manages to get his car to the inside for the next corner with a little bit of a bump, and he finds his way past. It was, after sort of normally driving sort of sports cars, going to these things could often be a little bit difficult judging the width of them. These two giving just about enough respect to the curbs through the chicane. The curbs, though, would claim more victims yet, as this van was to have a second roll at the chicane. Gets away with it, manages to land on his wheels. There was a recovery service going, trying to right my van, which wasn't working. They just couldn't right it. And then a blue Vandura decided to join in the fun as well. I just love having the camera stationed here. There should be a stationary camera here for every race. Just sit and watch the chaos that unfolds. The blue Vandura was in a terrible place. Luckily, there was a recovery team on hand that could move him out of the way. There was a little bit of a scrapyard for broken vehicles at the top of the track. Husky had pulled out a rather sizable lead, to be honest. While we had all been scrapping over second place and falling over each other and falling over in general, Husky had got, yeah, a rather large lead, and as he came onto the final lap, wasn't really in any danger other than sort of from himself and from the curbs, as his Vandura finds its way onto its side and clatters into a wall. The camera doesn't really quite know what to do, and yeah, that was the end of Husky's Vandura. And a Transit that had pretty much come from nowhere, almost inherited the lead, had survived the chaos at Maple Valley, was going to take the win. There was a little bit of a car park going on at the top of the circuit by the end. Yeah, it had been as I had expected, really, at Maple Valley. In the end, I think 7 vans finished. Nobody finished without damage. Yeah, 7 out of 16 cars crossed the line. So well done to the Transit. I think it was a Transit 123 again for surviving this race and not ending up on your roof. It did look like there was going to be a grandstand finish for 4th place between the only 2 remaining Vanduras in the entire race. As they round the top few corners, though, we couldn't leave Maple Valley without one last near miss as they round the chicane. The Vandura that was in 5th had a big moment. Somehow he managed to not only save it from rolling, managed to save it from going into the rest of the parked vehicles, which is pretty damn impressive. So after a very exciting race at Camino and plenty of rolls at Maple, we move on to our final race at Sunset, probably the most dangerous circuit of all for rolling of vehicles. Unfortunately, the big danger at the moment was lag that caused all sorts of chaos on the opening lap. I'd found myself just kind of praying that there was very little you could do when cars are jumping around. You've just got to hope that they don't end up lagging into you. It still didn't stop me trying from the odd overtake as we go too wide through the chicane and then too wide almost through the Willet Roll corner. I did touch the curb there. I didn't manage to not roll it though. Lag was to fire some cars around up front, and again I got very lucky as a Transit got catapulted backwards. God only knows what was going on there. Yeah, I got a bit lucky on that one, managing to survive all of the chaos on the opening lap to have one of the few undamaged vans lower down the order. And you'll notice as we come out of this corner, me and the red Transit had got away without too much damage. You can see the amount of speed we had compared to the vehicles around us. The green Transit was fighting back though as he cuts to the inside. I just have the acceleration out of the corner and can get the position. The red Transit then goes all the way around the outside. The green guy gets a little bit of a slide on. Further up, there was some close racing. Of all the races, this was probably the least exciting of the lot. The yellow Transit rather wisely backs out as the grey Vandura gets a long way on 2 wheels. There wasn't quite as much close racing in this one. I think a lot of that, though, is down to the huge lag spike at the start that knocked out sort of half the field. But yeah, there was still some action going on. I was trying to recover from said terrible start and was closing on to the back of a Transit and was right underneath him as we came through one of the faster corners on the track. Lack of visibility was a little bit of a problem as I turned into the corner, and just as I could see where I was, I realised my mistake, and I may have broken it a little bit, and broken it in quite a bad place as the rest of the field sort of tries to follow past. Yeah, not a good place to end up stranded. Luckily, nobody collected me as I tried to recover my vehicle. I could get it going again, but had suffered quite a lot of damage with that collision on the wall. Bravery of the evening certainly goes to the blue Transit trying to go around the outside of the first corner. That is not an overtaking manoeuvre that works very often. As they head up towards the second corner, the guy's on 2 wheels still keeps his foot down though as they go side by side through the next corner. Red Transit runs out a little bit wide, and this is the scary part. You do not want to be going too wide through the chicane. The Red Transit's on 2 wheels, but decides to stay on the inside. Through the Will It Roll corner, they get away with it as they run up towards the next corner. A good overtaking spot this next part's a fairly big braking zone. The Red Transit's on the inside. The other van's trying to cut back to the inside, can't quite do it. A little bit of assistance on the back of the red van. The blue car is trying to think about going too wide, can't quite get it done. The Red Transit's very, very defensive. The blue Transit trying to get a better run out of this corner, but can't quite do it. As they run up towards the next section, you can have a bit of a dive here. Blue Transit's just a little bit too far back and ends up taking a slightly wonky line through there. It looks like the lead car has a bit of breathing space for all of a second before putting it on 2 wheels. Does well to save it. You can see a rather damaged green van in front of us that didn't do quite so well. Yeah, does well to save it and gets away with only losing a couple of positions and doesn't damage his vehicle. But yeah, that was a pretty damn good save. Me and Husky had both taken a trip to the pits after having severe damage. We're battling over 10th place and we're a lap down, but to us this was the race for the lead, and I was determined to find a way past. Trying to go around the outside of the second corner was never likely to work, but I managed to sort of make it stick, and now we're too wide through the chicane, trying to give each other as much room as possible, then too wide through the Will It Roll corner, and still we're side by side, and it's very much a repeat of the last clip you saw. Come up towards the next corner, I brake as late as I dare in an attempt to get past, but running a little wide on the exit. Husky's trying to get back up the inside, and then we're going to go too wide almost through the next chicane. I wasn't quite sure where Husky was, trying to give him as much space as possible. Clash of a curb a little bit too much, and then Husky rolls, and it might have killed me slightly. Of all the crashes I think we've ever had in any of these races, that's probably the funniest I think we've seen. It would be typical. Just as I got the position, Husky rolls and takes my car. I'm not entirely sure how my van got rolled over in that one. But anyway, me and Husky are now broken in a really bad place. In the end, wasn't the most exciting of races here at Sunset. As I said, I think the lag at the start messed up quite a few vehicles, ended up spreading out the field rather a lot. As you can see, the Transit's going to take the win. Second place has just come into shot now. It was a very spread out this race, and it wasn't quite as chaotic on the curbs as I had thought it would be. Despite the fact you can roll at pretty much every single corner here, there hadn't been as many rolls as expected. Certainly hadn't been as many as there was at Maple Valley, but we couldn't end without having one more van fall over on the final corner coming onto the banking. Yeah, pretty much easy place to roll vehicles. However, I think because sort of the first lap incident, because the vehicles, or the first lap lag I should say, because everybody got a lot spread out and quite a few vehicles had to go to the pits, there wasn't quite as much close racing, which means you were not quite pushing it as hard necessarily, or you weren't taking slightly odd lines trying to overtake or trying to defend, or you didn't have your view obstructed by a van in front. So yeah, Sunset wasn't the most exciting of events. Camino was actually a really, really good race. There was an awful lot of close racing there, where it really shouldn't have been with these vans, and it wasn't until the final lap things got a little bit crazy on the curbs. Maple Valley proved to be unbelievably dangerous, which is not particularly surprising. Anyway, that is it for this video, guys, so thank you very much for watching. I highly recommend, if you have Forza 4 and you have these vans DLC, get some friends together and go racing with them. It really is ridiculous fun in these, and they prove to be very evenly matched between the two different vans. However, until next time, goodbye.